Kirk Math. Hey, we got a special presentation here today. If you are struggling with factoring these quadratic trinomials, we are going to go over some of, I think, the easiest of the different ways, including some new ways to kind of help you out. So in the textbook, they go over factoring by grouping and factoring using substitution. Substitution is there. You can still absolutely use it. But in my opinion, I feel like there's a lot of extra steps. So I'm going to go over factoring by grouping because I think it makes the most sense. And then I'm going to go over some other ways that other teachers have shown me using the box method and the divide and slide. So the first thing I wanted to go over was these steps again with factoring to grouping, steps to factoring with grouping. Now, this first step right here is always your first step. It doesn't matter if you're doing a box method or a sliding and dividing. If you can factor out a GCF, do that first. That's what you want to do first. You're going to get something on the outside and then look at the trinomial that's left on the inside, if it's a trinomial that's left after you've factored out, and see if you can then factor that again. Okay, so in this problem right here that we do not have a GCF that we can pull out. So we're going to continue on with our grouping method. So when we're grouping, we are looking at A and C, and we are multiplying them together. When I multiply 2 and 6 together, I am going to get a negative 6, 2 and negative 6. So I'm multiplying A and C here. This whole thing is C. You're going to get A times C is going to be an answer. That's the number that you're going to factor out. Okay. So in our case, we're going to do 2 times negative 6, and that's going to get me negative 12. And those are the factors that I'm going to start listing that when I add together are going to give me negative 1. So 12 is, 1 and 12. That's not going to give me negative 1. Negative 1 and 12. That's not going to give me negative 1. 3 and negative 4 will get me negative 1. 4 and negative 3 will not. These are the factors that I'm going to use. Okay, so those are the first two steps, right? See if you can factor anything else out. You can't. Multiply A and C, and then factor and replace that middle term. So, I can see that it's probably hard for you to see that bottom part there. I'll move it down a little bit. You can see here that finding those terms, negative 4 and positive 3, they went ahead and factored out that centered term, that B, there into those two terms and rewrote the polygon. Okay, pause here if you need to take more notes. We're going to jump to the next page now. Now here we have the same thing on the last page, this new polynomial, but now we're going to split it down the middle. Okay, this becomes one term, this becomes another. And we are going to take the GCF of each side. So we took this combination right here, and we found the GCF. So the GCF of 2x squared minus 4x is 2x. And when I divide 2x squared, I get x. And when I divide minus 4x, I get minus 2. Over here, the GCF of 3x minus 6 is 3. When I divide 3x by 3, I get x. When I divide minus 6 by 3, I get minus 2. Now we're going to identify those factors. We are taking these GCFs right here. That becomes one of my factors. And then the things that are left over, notice that this is the same. You should be getting the same thing left over in parentheses, and that becomes your second term. And you're done. If you had factored out something in the beginning, it would go over here in front, but we didn't have anything factored, so we're not going to do that. So we're not going to do that right there, and that becomes my final answer. So that is just going over again the steps to factoring with grouping. Okay, so just to practice that grouping style one more time, we're going to take this equation, or this polynomial here, trinomial, and we're going to go ahead and do those same steps. So the first thing is there anything that we can factor out? No. So I'm going to start by taking my a and my c and multiplying them together. 3 times negative 8 makes negative 24. Now I'm going to look for factors of negative 24 that when multiplied together make, or when added together, make negative 2. Okay, so we're going to start factoring out. So we can do 12 and 2 won't work. 3 and 8 won't work. What about 6 times 4? 6 times 4 is 24. If I make 6 negative and 4 positive, I can add those together to get negative 2. So now my next step, now that I've found those, is, I'm going to move this over, is I'm going to factor out that center piece. So I'm still keeping my A the same and my C the same, but my B is now going to become 6 minus 6x plus 4x. Okay? Now my next step is now to split this down the middle and group. I'm going to group the first two and the last two, and we're going to factor out our GCF. So what's a GCF of 3x squared minus 6x? Well, that would be 3x. And if I divide, I'm going to get x minus 2. And then on the other side, what's a common factor between 4x and minus 8? That would be 4. And I'm going to get x minus 2. Again, notice I know I'm doing it right because I'm getting the same thing here. Now I'm going to put these puppies together, and I'm going to take my GCFs as my first factor, 3x plus 4. And I'm going to take that final, whatever's left in here as my next factor, minus 2. And that's it. I'm all done. All right, this next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and do this one called the slide and divide. So the steps are written out here in case you want to write them down, but I'm going to show you with the same problem we just looked at this way. So the slide and divide kind of starts the same way. It's kind of the same thing we're just doing it slightly different. We are going to go ahead and slide and multiply. We're sliding A over to C by multiplying them together. And when we do that, you're going to get, we're taking the 3 and sliding it to the negative 8, and you're going to get negative 24. Then we're going to leave, so you'll probably notice that when we do that, we're left with this bit right here. We're just going to bring that down, okay? So x squared minus 2x minus 24. That's kind of our new polynomial. Okay, now we're going to factor like normal. Okay. So I'm going to still say, okay, what are my factors of negative 24 that would add to make negative 2? So we found out in the last one that was going to be negative 6 and positive 4. Okay. And we are going to write those out, x minus 6, x plus 4. Now we're going to go ahead and take that first term again, A, and we're dividing the second, you're dividing the numbers in the parentheses by 3, okay? If it can be divided evenly, then it goes in evenly, and you're going to get, I'm going to do it over here, x 6 divided by 3 is 2. If it cannot be divided, 4 cannot be divided by 3 evenly, then that leftover number goes and becomes the coefficient of x. And then you're done. And that's it. So that is the slide and divide. Okay, one more time with the slide and divide. So I'm going to slide the 2 over to the negative 6, and I'm going to multiply those together, and I'm going to get negative 12. I now have to find two factors of 12, negative 12 that make negative x when added. So let's see, negative 3 and positive 4, almost. Let's try positive 3 and negative 4. So we're going to go ahead and factor this out like normal. X plus 3, x minus 4. And now we're going to take this initial A and divide each term by it. Remember, if it cannot go in evenly, that becomes my new coefficient. 2x. And if it can go in evenly, then we divide and we're done. And that is our answer. All right, and our last example that we're going to do is going to be the box method. So we are going to use this equation here. And I wrote out the steps down here again if you want to write them down, but we're going to go over it and see if that makes sense. So the first thing you're going to do is, again, A and C are super important. So we're going to go ahead and take those and put them diagonal from each other in my box. I am now going to go ahead and multiply the two diagonally to get my A times C, okay? I am then going to still factor out. I need to figure out what factors of negative 10x squared are going to get me positive 3x to get me B, okay? Factor out to make B. That's where we are in our steps. So negative 10x squared would be positive 5x and negative 2x. When I put those together, then they're going to make positive 3, as you can see here. Okay, I'm now going to take those terms and I'm going to put them in the remaining boxes. Now I am going to put them in the empty spaces. We're now going to find the GCF of each row and column. So going up and down, vertically, the GCF would be 5x. Here would be negative 1. Then we're going horizontally. This is going to be positive 1. And horizontally again, the GCF is 2x. There are my pieces right there. So this is going to be 5x minus 1 times 2x plus 1. And that's it. We'll do another example here. All right, one more example with the box method. We're going to use this example we used earlier so we know if we're right or wrong. So I'm going to take A and C, and I'm going to multiply them. It becomes negative 24x squared. I need to find B. So I need to find those terms, and that's going to be, what did we decide? So negative 6 and positive 4x. Okay, negative 6 plus 4, sorry, x plus 4x become my extra terms, and they're going to go in these empty spaces. And now I'm going to start finding GCF. So the GCF of negative 6x and negative 8 is negative 2. GCF here is going to be x. GCF here is going to be 4. And the GCF here is going to be 3x. And we put them together. 3x plus 4, x minus 2. And I can go back to a previous page and see that that is correct. So you have now seen 3 different ways in detail and multiple examples to solve these quadratic equations, these quadratic trinomials. And you have, don't forget, the way of substitution, which I haven't shown here, but is in my other video if you like the substitution method. But I do think you have 3 really good options here. I would pick one you really like and go with it. You are also welcome to learn them all and just go with the flow for whichever one makes sense for whatever trinomial you find. Good luck.